Hey there. How are you?
Doing well, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. For those of you who are already watching, already seeing us live, thank you so much for being a part of a great discussion that we're going to have today. Super excited to get right into it, but let's give maybe about 2 more minutes to let the rest of the attendees and all of our guests join in. While we're waiting, we'll just give you like a little 411 about me and about Adrian. So my name is Josh Pratt, and I am the outreach expert here at Belkins. Originally started as an account manager and then realized that I would love to do more marketing and video work. So now I run all the webinars that we do and constantly record in front of a camera. But before that, I'd worked in sales, had a lot of fun, being able to bring in new opportunities and close deals and stuff like that. But enough about me, Adrian. Thank you so much for your time and thank you for being a part of our webinar today. Can you let me know a little bit more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. Family man. I live here in Orlando, Florida. Been in sales for well over 25 years. Always had a passion for technology. I started out in telecommunications, um, did some operations management, project management, but ultimately I know my passion was in sales and just helping businesses. And so my approach has always been to help people solve problems, and taking it more from a solution selling standpoint. And over the years, I've had various different types of teams, different types of industries that I work for. But now I'm in software, and which is obviously probably the most challenging yet the most rewarding time in my career, just because of the high energy, high demand, high velocity. So everything kind of like sped up to 2x. But yeah, I've spent most of my leadership career, um, focusing on making sure that I have the right ingredients for building the right type of team. People, process, and tools has really been my approach to building plans. And yeah, I'm just happy to be here today and kind of share some of my insight and advice, opinions, take them for what they are. And yeah, thank you for joining, everyone.
Awesome. Great. Well, I see people are pulling into the meeting and the webinar today. So thank you all for being here today. It's great to have you. And in case you didn't know, the topic of not just today, I think the topic of the last couple of months, even probably the year, is the recession and what's going on in the recession and how this is affecting companies around the globe. I know that companies are feeling it in a number of different ways, but we decided that we wanted to talk specifically about revamping your value proposition so that you can close more deals, whether you're in a recession or not. I think this is a topic that provides value in any period of life because there's always ways to improve. There's always ways to innovate and understand your audience in a sense better than ever before. But hey, what time is better to do it than when everything's kind of unsteady and you don't really know exactly what's going on? I think that it is important to start off saying that if your customers and if your potential customers don't feel that sense of confidence coming from you, that really does play a huge part. But anyways, we'll get onto it. So wanted to start off with just a little bit of information about us in case you haven't heard about us or this is your first time actually attending one of our webinars. We are Belkins and we specialize in lead generation and appointment setting. So we've been in the industry for 5 years. We've worked with more than 1,000 satisfied clients, scheduled more than 200,000 appointments. ROI achieved is 10 to 1. We've worked with more than 50 industries worldwide and over 4 million leads generated in that time. So it's great to be able to be a part of something that's growing and that's seeing success. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get on to our agenda. So essentially, we're going to break this down into 6 different parts. The first part is going to be understanding the current economic landscape. Then we're going to talk about the importance of value proposition in a recession. I'm sure we're going to be talking about not just in a recession, but in general as well. And then also some strategies for revamping your value proposition, conveying your new value proposition to close deals, and 6 tips on how to revamp your value proposition and close deals even during a recession. And then towards the end, we will have a Q&A question and answer time. So by all means, there is a chat box in everywhere that you can watch webinars nowadays. So leave us any questions you have now, and we'll try and answer those. We do have some people from our team moderating the the webinar to make sure that we do answer questions quickly. But then once we get to the question and answer section, please ask anything you'd like to know, and we will try and get all of them answered to you. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. So understanding the current economic landscape. What is the current economic situation? So obviously, for most people that work in our industries or many industries around the world, understand that there is this instability economically going on right now. There is this sense of something's moving, something's happening, something's going on. And that can affect a lot of different areas of our normal day work life. So I wanted to ask you, Adrian, firsthand from your experience and from what you're seeing as of the last couple months, could you provide like a brief overview of how the current recession is actually affecting sales and closing deals?
Absolutely. I mean, the economy is a major factor, and it's the bloodline of what the velocity and the success rate of any business is. And there are significant implications, for sales and deals closing. I think there's some key factors. First and foremost, even if the thought of a down economy or a recession is top of mind, it still impacts the buyer and ultimately the organization in terms of what their desire is to spend. And so decreased consumer and business spending is always going to be at top of the list. Second to that is budget constraints, right? I talk to clients all the time where they see value in our solution and they want to partner, but they've actually allocated or reduced budget, to other areas of the business, and they just don't have budget to move forward. And so it changes the timeline and sometimes even our ability to help provide solutions currently. I think also just it's a lot more increased pressure competitively. Companies start to double down when they start to see revenue go in the wrong direction, not up and to the right. And so you'll see a lot more competition, like figuring different ways to have those conversations with the same prospects that you might have in your pipeline, and even do things like drop their price or maybe offer additional services, things like that. So it's a much more competitive landscape, puts a lot more competitive pressure on an organization. And then lastly, decision making, right? Everything takes a lot more time. So people, when they're more cost conscious, are going to go through a longer, more vigorous process before they ever sign on to another operational cost. And so we'll talk a little bit more about it later, but that's why ROI is so heavily important. I mean, it always is for any business conversation, but even more so in a down or recessed economy.
You kind of got to a couple of our tips, but we'll get back to those later on. But yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that all of what you said is true. I do think that, recessions, as we've seen now, aren't things that just happen once a century. They're not going to happen once every 100 years. There are things that do play a big part in how everything works in our world, and finance is definitely one of those that, as we know, with like crypto and with stocks, things can go up and things can go down very, very quickly, and that can be either really helpful or really damaging to the economy. Plus, I mean, you got things going on like war, and then the undecisiveness of what's going on right now with like China and Taiwan. Everything is kind of adding on to this. Like, I don't really know what the next 6 months is going to look like, so maybe I'll just buckle down, save my money, and hope for the best. And then once things go better, and once things kind of clear out, then I've got more confidence that, yeah, everything's going to be good. No worries. I'm sure that we can now start working again. So my question would be, the current causes. What are your opinions of what's actually causing this recession? The biggest things.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, it's part of it is the pandemic, right? And sort of the after effects, the ripple effect of the pandemic. Also, there's specific industries that just cost to serve went up, right? Cost of goods, the ability to get goods from one place to the other, cost of transportation, bottlenecks within the supply chain, all those things that we read about in the news are going to make things more expensive to get to the consumer, whether it's agriculture and food and beverage and anything along those lines. And so in order for companies to succeed is they usually have to increase price. But then it also creates this kind of artificial inflation where other businesses and other industries that might not necessarily have a need to increase prices, they do anyway, because the market is heading in that direction. And so you start to see just everything get inflated. And then that just creates concern for everyone. We're like, oh, we must be in a down economy. And as most responsible people would do, is they want to start to lower their spend, right? They maybe put off that vacation or that investment in a business for growth. And timelines change, budgets change, and a lot of times it's all because of the perception that the economy might not be stable. And ultimately, it's that behavior, that consumer behavior, that ends up driving the economy down to recession in the first place.
Yeah. So I guess the biggest probably question is, how long do you think we'll actually be in this recession?
Gosh, I mean, that's a great question. I'm no economist by any means, but some people speculate that there's a cycle, as you said, and it's like a 7-year cycle. So after coming up from a very, very high like real estate boom and so forth, which we've seen coming out of the pandemic, it can usually take anywhere from like 3 to 5 years before things start to stabilize again. Others are speculating that it's tied to politics, depending on where you are, what nation you're in. Here in the U.S., obviously, people are there's a lot of division politically, and a lot of people are waiting for next November to really see what happens from a presidential standpoint before they have faith in the market. And so, gosh, I mean, in my opinion, it could last anywhere from 6 to 18 more months. In my opinion, before we start to see the conversation maybe pivot.
So this year we just kind of gotta buckle down and hope that it ends sooner.
Yeah, and just be more strategic, right? I think any good sales organization in any business has to adapt to market dynamics and change their sales strategy, but also building trusting relationships with their customers and their prospects. It's all about being a trusted advisor and a thought leader in your industry and whatever it is that you do. And so being tuned in to what's happening, picking up on market trends, and we'll get into some of the other tips later, but really just taking advantage of those relationships and really being able to be front and center and offer valuable advice to your prospects will continue to give you a pipeline of potential business, I think, regardless of what the economic climate is.
Good points. In case you guys don't see this, we are going to actually put up a poll real quick. You should be able to see it right by your chat box. It should be public now. So have you actually changed your value proposition since the start of the recession? Just curious to hear your thoughts. I know that a lot of companies have really sat down and reevaluated what are the biggest things that we should change to survive, not just survive, but to thrive. Because I think that's the big part. A lot of companies have that mindset of, are we going to survive this? And that's, in a sense, setting themselves up for the chance that they could maybe not survive. I think mindset plays a huge part in every area of life. I think that if you're confident and okay, everything's going to be good, we're going to get through this, we're going to get through it stronger because we're together as a team. I think that in itself, just thinking that way already gives you a bigger boost to actually come up with new ideas, to come up with ways to revamp your value prop and to come up with new strategies and to just sit down without this kind of panic mode attitude throughout however long this is going to be. Because if you think about it psychologically, how long could this go on for? And if we're all sitting here with this kind of panic mode, reserve kind of mindset, instead of a go-getter, we're gonna get through this, we're gonna own this situation and make it to our our furthering so that we can actually grow because of this. So many companies will lose it, and it's sad, but it's true. I think that if we don't have the right mindset, if we don't approach this correctly, there are going to be people that are going to be beside us that are just going to kind of slowly drift away because they, in a sense, are setting themselves up for a fall. What would you say? Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. It really is about being relevant, right? If you ignore headlines and you try to have a conversation with someone, a business conversation, and you're not being mindful of what they're currently faced with today, right, then you lose all credibility. So the idea is that if you can kind of adapt a different flavor of your current value proposition, so it's more relevant to what your prospects and customers are facing today, and tying that back to how perhaps you might be able to help them overcome those obstacles, There may be several different pain points and business objectives that you're trying to solve for, but that might not be top of mind, right? Everyone is more concerned about that uncertainty. And so addressing it as opposed to ignoring it and kind of like building a conversation around it is really the best approach.
I couldn't agree more, honestly. So I think that we agree that really truly it's not about surviving. We just kind of got to throw that out, forget about that, and just think, how do we thrive?
Right.
How do we set ourselves up for success? How do we come through the crazy chaotic period that we're living in and understand that this isn't the end, and it's far from the end for many companies. This is simply the beginning. So moving on, the importance of value proposition in a recession. So in general, obviously value proposition is something that every company should dive into before a recession or during a recession or after a recession. If you don't understand exactly what you can sell and how you can sell it, I mean, something that is not exactly on topic, but something that's really been helping me in so many ways to look at things differently is the number of questions I ask myself daily nowadays. I'm asking myself questions about everything. How can I be better in what I'm doing? How can I be worse in what I'm doing? What am I doing that's not enough? What am I doing that's too much? How am I finding a good work-life balance? There's the more questions I'm asking myself, I'm understanding that I have such a better, clear understanding of what I'm supposed to do right now, right here, and what I'm supposed to do in 6 months from now or in a year from now. And I think it's the same thing about value proposition. Is it's like, okay, so you have to ask the questions, but if you don't know your value proposition at the beginning or at all, then how can you ask questions about something you don't know yourself? So value proposition, aka what you're offering, it needs to be very fine-tuned. It needs to be a very clear understanding that you understand that this is exactly how I can sell. This is exactly what I can sell. And recession proof. How would you say you can make it recession proof?
Yeah, no, that's first of all, that's a great point. I just wanted to talk about your advice and just being on a constant journey of progression. I think most successful organizations realize that how you serve your audience, how you serve your market always has to change because it's an ever-changing, evolving market. So if we only wait until an emergency, until a down economy, for example, and that's the only time that we're really looking to adjust, then that means that our value prop and how we really provide solutions to our market is stale. But those organizations that really realize that this process of constantly refining, constantly collecting information and data, and really realizing, a problem that you might have solved 4 or 5 years ago, is that really the most relevant problem? Is there a different way to go about adding more value to your market? And so whether it's for economic reasons or just for making sure that you're constantly refreshing that value prop, I think the process and the sense of urgency and the priority to do so, that should be there regardless of what the economy is like. But in terms of making sure that your value proposition is somewhat recession proof, there's a couple of things that you want to think about. First and foremost, have consideration to a big focus on cost, savings, and efficiency, right? Everyone wants to save money. Everyone wants to have a return on investment from a business standpoint, but especially so during a down economy, right? They're always looking for ways to reduce costs, improve efficiencies, and if whatever your product or service is, if you can prove ROI and show customer testimonials and have ROI calculators and use other ways, tangible evidence where you can show organizations how you can help them save cost and or streamline operations, optimize resources, that's going to be a major value add to any organization. And it might be a little money up front that they need to pay for your current solution, but it's going to turn out to bring a lot more revenue later on down the line. Next is, and I talked about ROI, of course, is providing more options for payment. So a lot of companies, maybe they do 30-day terms, 60-day terms, maybe they do credit card charges, or they do invoicing. But at the end of the day, by being more flexible, maybe start to consider providing more flexible pricing options or even finance options, depending on your company or business, to really open up opportunity so that you're not necessarily up against that obstacle of budget, right? For a client that has a reduced budget, maybe they'd still be willing to sign on with you if you were more flexible on how they'd be able to afford that solution. And then I would also say adapt to changing customer priorities, right? At the end of the day, it might be that, just to give you like a quick example, I work for an organization that serves the trucking and transportation industry, and our applicant tracking system is a fantastic solution that helps trucking companies recruit more CDL drivers. And that is a fantastic solution to sell during a time where every trucking company is trying to get more drivers and there's a CDL driver shortage. Now, with the shift in the economy, our value prop had to change. Now, there isn't as many trucking companies that were without drivers. Most of them have seats that are full. And so now the priorities on the customer side have changed. And what they're more focused about is risk mitigation. How can they avoid not being compliant with the DOT, Department of Transportation? How can they avoid potential infractions or litigation against their business, or getting suspended for failing an audit and being out of service with one truck or their whole fleet, God forbid. And so what their priorities are now need to completely be my priorities if I want to sell into that market and that audience. So making sure that your value prop resonates with those changing priorities is crucial. And then the last is to offer a much more robust and exceptional, I would say, a customer support model. Now more than ever, when businesses are concerned, when they're worried about spend, when they're ultimately rethinking whether or not they truly are getting the value in those products and services, customer support and customer service can go a very long way. Making sure that you're doing everything that you possibly can to be a good partner and not just sign them up for the product or the service and let things fall where they may, but continue to be there to make sure that they're engaging in your platform if you sell software, or that the products that you're selling are meeting their demands, and continuing to maintain communication with those clients, making sure that that's not only something that's involved in your business model, but that's tied to your original value prop and how you add value to your market.
So something that just kind of came to my mind that I really believe ties really closely into this is the fact that those companies that do understand how to be flexible in times like this, they're examples. I mean, the first point that you made about ROI. So obviously everyone's interested in ROI, and something that's very commonly overlooked is the fact that any kind of new vendor relationships, both ends of the deal are looking for the best return on investment. And it's so easy, I think, as companies and as people that work in companies, we all think of, okay, what's the best return on investment for me? And then, we'll make it happen. We'll make it work. But truly, when companies put their clients first and they think, okay, not only can I find a way to best serve them, best offer them the best of everything that we have for a better price or for a more comfortable payment method, or however they end up going about it, they're not in a sense only thinking about their best interest. If they're doing it correctly, they're also saying, I want to be a good example and hope that my good example can actually influence my client, because everybody's got a client that's a client of your client. And if that makes sense, like everyone's working somehow intertwined. It might be 5 companies across, it might be 20 companies across, but somehow there's some kind of point where one company on one side of the world connects with another company on the other side of the world, and they just don't know because there's so many companies in between, that if we did a full circle of giving a good example, especially those that are influential and that have, the honor of being like a thought leader in the industry, if they set out that good example, it's not only are they trying to help their clients and they're trying to help their business grow by giving something out and offering something that is more accessible and more pleasing, it's also a potential chance to actually not shoot yourself in the foot and save yourself something down the road, which you might never actually know about. But I think that it's very true. I think that, all of the things that you pointed out. So with ROI and then customer support, the same thing. There's so many different ways that if we go about thinking not just about, what's the best thing for me, but what's the best thing about my prospects and my clients, that does go a long way. And especially in times like this, this is when everyone, I mean, it's like, if you think about it, let's take an example. Back in medieval days, the palace is on fire. And all the people, what do? They panic. And who are they looking to? They're looking to the king. They're looking to the person that's in charge. And if he starts running around like crazy, they're all going to start running around like crazy. But if he says, here's what we're going to do, go get water, go get sand, we're going to put this out and we're going to rebuild. That's exactly the same thing that's happening right now. If those thought leaders are running around, not coming up with plans, not coming up with ideas, and just kind of panicking, everyone else that's looking to them for advice, they're going to start doing the same thing. And then what are we going to see? We're going to see another Great Depression. We're going to see another recession that really does impact, in the sense that it's not 2 or 1 or 2 or 3 years that we're talking about, or 5 years. We're looking at 10, 20, 30 years of just everything kind of collapsing, to the point where it's going to take so much time to rebuild to where we are today. Kind of a mouthful, but
certainly.
All right. So I have a question for you, though. We've been talking about like what to do. What would you say wouldn't be a good thing to do? So what would you say are some common mistakes that companies might make when revamping their value proposition during economic downturns? And I mean, obviously, don't give out your stuff for free. I mean, try and find a way to still not compromise your growth. But what would you say some common examples would be of mistakes?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, neglecting customer research, right? The feedback that your clients give you is completely invaluable. I mean, it's not conducting research through, and making sure that it ties into the value prop is a big mistake. Your clients, your prospects, your customers have a lot of the answers that you need, what's really important to them. And trying to make those decisions in a vacuum, in a silo, without really taking into account their perspective is a common mistake. Overlooking the competition, right? What is your competitor? What are they doing? Are they changing their approach? Are they focusing in on a different market? By not being prepared to, take an advantage over your competition, it makes it a lot more difficult for you to know whether or not that adjustment in your value prop is even going to have any success. And then this is a huge one here, is not communicating your revised value prop, right? Just because you as an organization decides that we're going to have a little bit of a different spin on how we add value to our market, if that's not widely communicated, right, through marketing, through sales training and sales conversations, through customer testimonials, and then through webinars and all the other things, then how does your market really understand and know that what you're offering today is a little bit different than what you offered 3 or 6 months ago? So communication is key. Clear and consistent messaging across all your marketing campaigns and channels, and making sure that if you do need to change that target audience as a result of that adjustment to value prop, that you're targeting the right audience and having that conversation. Don't just assume that because you made those changes that everyone now knows. And I think ultimately it's about not putting yourself in a situation where you're not over promising and under delivering. Anytime that an organization wants to try and refresh their elevator pitch or their value proposition, how they serve their market, there's promises in there, right? How they're going to help overcome certain obstacles, how they're going to help relieve and mediate some of those pain points. But if you overpromise and underdeliver, you use a lot of credibility, and ultimately it's not going to result in the kind of outcomes that you're looking for.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine if all of the points that you just mentioned, so talking about it, showing it, marketing it, letting people know, can you imagine if like nobody talked about the recession, nobody talked about how there's a change, like everyone's just like, what's going on, why is everything going up, why are prices going crazy, why is people not wanting to work with me?
Certainly.
Like if we're talking about the problem, why not talk about the solution and how we can best find a solution? I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and you'd be surprised how common that actually is.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's a pride issue, and it's for some companies they're like, I don't want people to think we're being impacted. I don't think I want everybody to understand that it's a rough time for us, But it's that openness, that's what really does, like you mentioned, losing credibility. It's if you do exactly the opposite, you gain that credibility. You say, hey, we're all living in a tough time, not just you. We're all in this together. Yeah. And one way or another, it all comes down to the fact that we're together. We're on this planet together. If we're able to make successful things and then also make unsuccessful things, let's always stick together and get through every situation that comes our way.
Sure.
So strategies for revamping your value proposition: understand changing customer needs and expectations, lower prices, more flexible payment terms, or additional services. We pretty much already covered this. We've kind of gone so far in advance that we're just kind of probably going to recap everything that we've already talked about with the next couple slides, but then also focusing on core products and services, emphasize cost effectiveness, and show empathy and support to customers. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't think that I think that revamping doesn't necessarily mean if you're for example, a lead generation agency, you know what, forget it, we're not going to do lead generation anymore, we're going to start completely with something new. I don't think I think revamping doesn't mean completely changing your strategy and hoping for the best. It just means making a little bit of a tweak here, a little bit of a tweak there. Just an interesting fact, like during the 2008 recession, companies like Netflix and Amazon shifted their value propositions, focusing on convenience and cost effectiveness, and those are companies that obviously everyone knows about. I don't believe that there's probably many people on the planet that have access to internet, have access to social media, and don't know either of these companies. And those, once again, it's those big companies that are showing, yes, there is an issue. Yes, here's what we're going to do because we want to continue giving our services away. And Netflix especially, it's like, yes, we're living in a crazy time, so here, go watch more stuff and don't think about it when you're done working, just relax. But anyways, moving on. So conveying the new value proposition to close deals. So like you mentioned, it's so important. We have to convey it. We have to say, we can't just change everything up and then hope no one notices, or hope someone notices and then ask the question themselves. Right. I believe that going out in front of it and saying, here's what's going on, here's how we're going to deal with it. So using email marketing and website messaging to get your new and improved VP to the public, offering discounts. We also mentioned that, flexible payment terms and or bundling services. So finding ways to, as companies think, okay, what can I do that could make us still be able to not backslide and not stop our growth, but in a way that's better for us and for our customers as well. And then leveraging digital channels to reinforce your value proposition, website updates, content marketing, SEO, and social media. Sure. So obviously it's a digital world. There's so many different ways that we can leave digital footprints, not just when everything's good.
Yeah, no, certainly. The only thing that I would add to that, though, is the sales team, right? Leveraging the sales team and making sure that they're properly equipped to handle those conversations, through training, through clear and compelling messaging, but also providing sales collateral so that there's more tangible things that can continue that conversation, other tools, and even doing role plays and, different things like that, sales simulations. Incorporating customer success stories is another good strategy, particularly if you have revamped your value prop and now you've won a new account. Like, tell that story, right? People want to learn, how is that you're going to be relevant to me today? And the sales team is really going to resonate whatever you're doing from an investment in marketing, content marketing, SEO, and social standpoint. When it comes down to it, it's that sales call that really needs to reiterate the message that they've already seen. So if an organization isn't prepared to handle that change in conversation, that's a huge miss.
You mentioned something on one of our first meetings about the fact that you have to basically try 3 times harder now. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, it's just a matter of learning the new. I mean, I'm a big data guy, and so I look at a lot of the different metrics and indicators to try and manage my business and make decisions based on what trends look like. And it's all about conversion rates for me. At the end of the day, if I start to see my conversion rate start to fall, then I know I need to increase my level of activities. Do I need more emails? Do I need more calls? Do I need more demo requests? How are my discovery meetings converting? How are my sales qualified leads converting into sales opportunities? And when you start to see changes within your conversion, then you may have to increase the volume of attempts at bats. And that might be from a marketing standpoint. It can also be from an outbound prospecting standpoint within the sales team. A number of touches per account, everything kind of got to like 2 to 3x just to get to the same number of meetings and the same number of potential opportunities in the funnel. So I guess the key takeaway is it's going to take a lot of hard work. Especially, and a lot of companies just don't realize that fact fast enough, and then they put themselves behind the curve.
Yeah, for sure. So it kind of touched up on this, but I'm curious if there's any other ones that come to your mind. But like key metrics, what would you say some of the key metrics or indicators that you should be tracking to make sure that your revised value proposition is actually working?
Absolutely. So obviously conversion rates, I mentioned that already. Revenue, you're trying to get to revenue, right? So you want to see if there's been changes in revenue as a result of that shift. Take a quick look at your customer acquisition cost, CAC, and seeing, making sure that if it's decreasing or it remains stable, right? And requiring those new customers. And then listen to your clients, customer satisfaction, net promoter scores, things like that. They'll tell you right away. And that's customer feedback will always be valuable, but especially when an organization makes a change. That's the very, very first place you want to go to really see if what your change is resonating and is it having that impact that you're looking for. But then there's also analytics from a website standpoint, whether it's landing page metrics or things like that, conversion to, your digital advertisement. Those are other indicators. And then qualitative feedback too, from, maybe your competition, maybe some prospects that you've spoken to in the past that are not interested in your solution, but you still maintained a good relationship, or your partners. Partnership and co-selling is huge, very, very important. It's another great resource, not just to help close deals and kind of test out the waters of your revised value prop, but to get feedback, right? A prospect might not tell you first person, what their negative experience was, but they might share it with another trusted partner. And if you have a relationship with that person or that organization, you'll still be able to get that feedback.
So let's imagine this. You got a company and they revamp their value proposition, hoping that it's going to work because of the recession going on. It doesn't work. It doesn't help. What would you then say to do? What would your next steps be?
Gosh, well, first and foremost, revisit your customer feedback.
Try again?
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely have to try again. You have to refine your value prop right away. If you're starting to see that those KPIs are leading to the fact that decision is not helping the business, it's not providing better outcomes and results, then take a deeper dive into your customer base. Really resonate and see both qualitative and quantitative feedback, and try to really understand the reasons why it might not be resonating. Is it because you're focusing on all the wrong priorities? Is it because you haven't overcome certain objections, or you weren't prepared to handle certain objections, or there's just certain areas of dissatisfaction that you didn't think about in that new approach? Also, internal feedback, right? Make sure that all departments are aligned. Talk to your customer support and service teams and product, and talk with the sales teams, and really understand, especially those that are on the ground dealing with these conversations on a daily basis, what are those objections that are coming up and what's preventing people from moving forward. But it's really about test and reiterate, right? It's okay to make some adjustments, and it's okay if you don't see those results. And that's why I mentioned earlier, companies that already have kind of a method of constantly refining their value prop and constantly making sure that it's the most relevant way that they can serve their market, then a lot of these exercises that we're talking about today, Josh, isn't new, right? Whether you're doing it for economic reasons or not. So the advice that I think I would give is, regardless of where we are economically and whether or not your value prop is really resonating with your market, it's still very healthy for a business to make sure that this process is part of their go-to-market.
So essentially, if you're thinking correctly with the right business mindset, it shouldn't matter if you're in a recession. You should be constantly thinking about this. You should be constantly thinking about, okay, I hit my quota, but how do I overachieve it, right?
Certainly.
I mean, it makes sense. And the way you put it, I couldn't make it any clearer. I think that was a perfect explanation.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
So, my last question before we get to our 6 tips, obviously you and I were probably thinking in a sense of more B2B, maybe B2C. I wanted to just kind of ask, very specifically, how does a recession influence B2B sales and their value propositions compared to B2C? Like what are you seeing personally from your experience?
No, that's a great question. And I've had the pleasure of managing teams that serve both B2C, right to the consumer, as well as, B2B. I mean, your decision-making process is going to be a little bit different when you're serving businesses, right, as opposed to consumers. Everyone's going to be cost conscious, during a recession. Both, a consumer or a business are going to be very cost conscious. But I also think that in B2B, the value proposition is going to have to involve multiple stakeholders, right? There's multiple decisions. And so being able to be relevant to that individual stakeholder, now you have to kind of have multi-threaded value props. cost reduction and efficiency, both B2B and B2C care about that. But I think B2B buyers are looking for a much more long-term cost savings, because it's not just,
Mhm.
whether or not I can reduce my total overhead, but also, am I going to streamline operations? Am I going to improve productivity? Am I going to ultimately increase long-term my profit, and ultimately lower my acquisition cost? Those are things that most of the time a consumer is not going to be really concerned about. I think
Yeah.
relationship building and trust is also another. You definitely want to have trust and selling to a consumer. But a lot of the B2B value props need to be more about long-term relationships with multiple stakeholders, and being able to prove that you've been able to do that with other clients. So customer testimonials, and then just being able to show your success. I think that's a little bit more valuable from a B2B standpoint.
Well, and I think in itself, B2B and B2C are completely different. I mean, obviously they're completely different, but B2B, you're having to figure out a way that you're still effective, not for one person, or for the general public. You're looking at a complex machine of tons of different working parts, and depending on what you're offering is specifically, like, for example, if you're outsourcing, imagine you're an outsource company. That's a big deal for companies that are thinking, okay, how do I keep getting sales to come in? If I'm needing to outsource instead of doing in-house, or vice versa, that's already multiple people's jobs on the line, in a sense, or taking on more people, which is additional expenses. I mean, it's very different. So I think that's very true. I think that everybody is pretty excited to get to our last section before we get to our Q&A. So let's go ahead and head over there. So the 6 tips on how to revamp your value proposition and close deals even during a recession. Understanding the current economic landscape. We talked very in depth about the fact that it's not just about, it's the mentality of not just the what's going on right now, but what's going to go on in the future, and what was going on last month or years ago. Focusing on cost effectiveness, that to me, I think it's one of those things that it's like, in a sense, of course, but then have you really thought about it? Maybe not as often as I should have, or maybe not as deeply as I should have. I think that a lot of, just from my past experience with different jobs that I've worked, I've looked at people and how they think about cost effectiveness, and it's just like, you do understand you've got a bunch of people working for you, right? Like, so I think that that's really important. If you're not thinking about just not even just continuing to pay people salaries, but also how are you going to get through this if this lasts for 10 years? There's got to be some kind of cost effectiveness, and there's got to be some kind of, either we don't need this, it's not bringing in as much value, or we value this more, let's keep this. I think that cost effectiveness is definitely something that needs to be on the table, laminated, and discussed commonly. And not, once again, I think a lot of these points honestly are very true, not just in a recession, but also in real life, because I mean, in real life, I wish it was a dream we were
Yeah,
living right
right.
now, but you know um in non-recession times, that's what I meant to say. And then offer more for less, straight up. I mean, how can you
I mean, yeah, just give more for your customers' investment, right? So I think at the end of the day, whether it's lowering your price, adding more to the products or services that you provide, offering a more collaborative customer experience. I think Josh had some internet issues, so we'll probably get him to join back on in just a moment. But really, just giving more value for what your ultimate go to market offer is. It just sets the right message that you are a good partner, and you're trying to help add as much value as you possibly can for whatever that initial investment is. And it doesn't always have to be based on cost or price alone, but as I said, it could also be different, enhances to the products. Maybe you're offering some new features, or an enhanced customer service, more of a collaborative way of assisting, and maybe even longer terms, things like that. Just using creativity to offer more for less, I think is pretty paramount. And then,
I
oh, go ahead,
have
Josh.
to
Sorry.
Yeah, I have to apologize for the technical error. we were actually sitting down right before the start of the webinar, and I got disconnected again, and we just kind of got to talking about the fact, everyone's concerned about AI taking our jobs, and it's not even showing my camera. Hold on. But it's like, if AI is going to work like our technology works, then we shouldn't have to worry about it, because we need the reliability of a human being. He'll be there, he'll do it.
For
Yeah.
sure.
So, but I don't want to interrupt you. You were
Yeah,
saying
no, I
good
was just
facts.
kind of elaborating a little bit on tip 3 and kind of transitioning into 4, which is communicate, empathy, and support. Which kind of ties into number 3. I mean, offering more for less. One of my suggestions was being more collaborative and having a much better customer support and service experience. And so being able to do that, right? Being a good partner and communicating that empathy and offering that support is paramount, especially during tougher times.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and head over to our question and answer section, and we have a lot of time to talk and answer any questions. You're still
No,
not
I'm
seeing
not.
me though,
I
right?
see. I have your audio, but not video.
Okay. Let me see if I can just do this old fashioned and connect with normal face cam. Anyways, yeah. So if you have any questions, please leave them in our chat box. We are more than happy to chat. Just, any question at all. So don't be shy. We love this time. This is a great time to actually hear your thoughts as well. If it's maybe not even a question, it's just your personal opinion. Please let us know, because we'd like to hear your thoughts as well.
Certainly. And Josh is jumping back on just a moment. Yep. There we go.
Hey, there we go. There we go. Outsourcing sales can present its own set of challenges and struggles. Communication and coordination, miscommunication, language barriers, or time zone differences can hinder collaboration and results in misunderstanding or delays. Professional business operating across all time zones with a dedicated offshore team that guarantee 100% genuine solutions to all your troubles. That sounds great. Honestly, that's phenomenal. I think that, yeah. For those of you who might not know, I'm actually located in Ukraine, and I've gotten quite used to working in all different time zones. So we've had clients from Australia, we've had some clients from Scotland, we've had clients from America. So I can say that I feel that being able to work wherever, whenever, that's definitely a good thing. So thank you for sharing that, Sarah.
Absolutely. It does put us in a situation where we have to rely a little bit more on technology at times, right? But I think that's a good thing. It definitely changes the way that we work and collaborate.
Well, technology is going to continue going forward, no matter what we do. We've got, if you haven't seen, we have a bunch of videos on our YouTube channel, by the way. You should go and check it out. We have our next trends episode coming out soon, and we actually talked a little bit about the future of technology and the metaverse. So, Adrian, kind of a nerdy question, but are you a Star Wars fan? Did you ever watch Star Wars
Absolutely.
movies?
I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Growing up, it was Star Wars or G.I. Joe, and most of my friends had G.I. Joes, but I was more into the sci-fi stuff. So I was a Star Wars fan for sure.
So with talks of like the metaverse and Apple releasing its first VR life kind of goggles, or not goggles, glasses, instead of gaming, it's like looking at the fact that very soon those meetings that all the Jedis had in the Jedi Temple, when maybe Mace Windu or any of the other Jedi Masters weren't able to actually join. If you haven't seen Star Wars, I'm sorry, this probably sounds very hard to understand, but essentially there's a group of people all together, and some of them are not in the meeting physically, but they are holograms, because that's the technology that they have in this movie, in this trilogy, or whatever, the saga. But that's something that we're probably going to see here in the near future. And honestly, I'm interested to see how it'll look. I still think that even after COVID, I'm still like tired of everything being online. Like, I would much prefer if you and I were actually sitting right across from the table where I'm sitting right now and having this chat, looking eye to eye instead of through a camera lens. But that is that's where we are right now. That is the life that we've got. Whenever you can have those real life, in-person experiences, those are always great. But Yeah. So we have a question. Are there any specific strategies or tactics that B2B companies should employ to effectively communicate their revised value proposition to potential clients in a recession? You can probably put this in a very short and very precise answer. I'll
Yeah,
pass the mic
certainly.
to you.
I think ultimately it's make sure that you have alignment between marketing and sales and put together a refresh campaign where you have clear and compelling messaging on what problems you're actually trying to solve, things that hit home for your consumer base. And then, as I mentioned earlier, equipping the marketing and sales team with all the right tools and resources and training so it becomes habit, right? Sales is very repetitive in
Mm-hmm.
any organization. And so it takes some time for people to feel comfortable and confident in being able to deliver a message or a talk track. And so it's all about repetition. It's constant repetition, and being able to provide support there. But then also monitoring, making sure that it's resonating and adjusting as needed. I mean, that's, I think, paramount.
Great. I have nothing to add. I can't agree with you more. We do have another poll. I just remembered. We're going to go ahead and put that up on the screen. Go ahead and leave your thoughts if you do have any. Sarah said, Josh, artificial intelligence does not significantly impact our sales business, as the complete comprehension of prospects can be achieved through human expertise and analysis, relying on the proficiency and capabilities unique to human intelligence. I honestly agree. I think that human intelligence and there is this podcaster, Neil deGrasse Tyson. If you don't know who he is, you just got to go open up YouTube and type in Neil deGrasse Tyson. It's super, very interesting scientific stats and scientific facts and things that most of us don't know maybe a ton about, but he puts them very clearly in a very entertaining way. And he talked about this, and he talked about the fact that it's like, okay, so AI is smart. No one can change my mind about the fact that yes, it's smart. But if I have a conversation today and something that was discussed in that conversation brings a new idea into my mind, AI is not going to know about that idea. And so AI is always going to be one step behind human intelligence. So I would agree completely. I do think that it's also important to understand that AI is becoming more and more, it's adding more competitiveness in our
Certainly.
world. And, with the potential implementation of Neuralink from Elon Musk, if that does get passed and if that's something that's going to be accessed very often, we live in a competitive world. Everybody has something that they want, and then there's always people beside them that want the same thing. So if there's this real potential that this Neuralink is going to be more commonly used and more commonly inserted, I guess you would probably say that correctly, then there's going to be some things that we will have to understand. Okay, either I'm going to follow in that trend and get a Neuralink, or I'm not going to. But there's the potential that if we're not aware of the fact that it's out there, just kind of like the same thing we're talking about today, recession and how everything's changing. If we don't think about the fact that this is changing and it's going to continue to change in the next 5-10 years, artificial intelligence will get to a point where it's somehow in the smallest way used almost in every company, I believe. But it doesn't mean that it's more important or it's going to do better work. I think that especially I use ChatGPT a lot for a lot of different things that I use, but I've come to understand that I can use it effectively because I understand how to tell it what to do. It can't do exactly what I want it to do. I have to go through like request after request after request after point after point after point to tell it, to get to the point where it's actually like, okay, this is a kind of like what I want, and I'll just go and make some changes, because it's the same thing. It's like
Right.
it's a robot, it's a machine. And I have the creativity that it doesn't have. And I think that you would
Oh,
agree, Adrian.
absolutely.
What do you
I
think?
mean, I know a lot of people that I talk to, the subject matter just refer to it as an enhancement, right, to the human experience, and that's kind of how I look at technology. Trusting that it's leading is really where we falter, but knowing that it's just an enhancement, a tool, if you will, in what we're already doing, then I look at it from a more positive lens. But I'm actually especially excited to start to see more in-person type of experiences where we can utilize technology, because that human connection is so important. Any chance that I get, I like to
Yeah.
be out and about. I get a lot of my energy through people. And whether you're extroverted or introverted, I think everyone will agree that being connected to other humans is really in our nature, right? It's in our DNA. It's how we're wired. And to take that away from either a personal experience or a business meeting, it really just makes it feel less natural. So as we continue to
Yeah.
evolve our technology, I think it's really, really important that we can kind of continue to, recreate some of those human experiences.
Well, and also, I mean, if we're talking about sales, you're not going to have an AI do a cold call like you could do with your years of experience. They're going to, the prospect's going to ask a specific question, and the AI is going to scramble to try and find the information, but it's such a unique, very specific pain point that any sales rep that's been working for at least 6 months or a year knows about their company and how their offering
Totally.
overcomes that pain point. And that's the thing that AI can't do. It can't on the spot just come up with a understanding that's made not through all of these scientific posted publicly accessible articles or findings. It's those, if you and I talk about something and it makes us $1 million, but we never mention it to anyone and never talk about it with any online sources or anything, we still know that, but AI will
Right.
never be able to know that because it's the human. It's just, I mean, I honestly, I understand some people being afraid of AI, but then at the same time, I don't understand when people start to panic. It's like if you are doing the best of what you could possibly be doing, and somehow you don't end up continuing doing what you're doing, that's just a sign, I think, from the universe that you got something better that's just waiting for you. Because in the end, what can we do? All we can do is our best. Even your best could be not going 100%, but 110% or 150%, doing so much more. And we're always going to be in places where we never know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't have complete control of everything. So, but yeah, I think that AI can be used helpfully. And I think that even in situations like right now, for example, if you don't really enjoy researching, you can go and do an AI like ChatGPT and say, what are like the 10 main key takeaways that I could focus on right now from past recessions that might relate to my situation right now? And it might give you a bunch of things, but I would trust a 15-minute, 30-minute, hour-minute talk with you than I would over any AI. Just that's how it is. It's you can't. I mean, yeah, it's like when you ask ChatGPT and it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I only have knowledge until
Right.
2021. It's like, and imagine if you and I were talking and I'm like, Adrian, what do I do? And you're like, I'm sorry, I only have knowledge until
I'm
like 2
sure
years
someone's
ago.
going to
It's
do
like,
that as a bit one
what?
day, in an interview or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, just use it when you can, however you can, and maybe it'll help you. But I think that the key points that we talked about today are truly what's going to help you understand how to get through this recession better off than before.
For
So,
sure.
if we have any other questions, by all means, we still got 2 minutes before we hop off. But I mean, overall, Adrian, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure
Mine
speaking
too.
with you. I mean, it's very rarely when I get the opportunity to talk with somebody that's got so many years of experience. And I'm not calling you old. I'm just
That's
calling
the
you
one byproduct of
experienced. So,
experience, right? Is it
um,
also comes with age.
well, this is true, and I feel like I'm understanding that sooner than or later than I wish I had before. Like thinking about my 21-year-old self, and I'm just banging my head against the wall. I'm like, what were you thinking, kid? Like so. But yeah, it was a pleasure. It was a great conversation. I agree with everything you mentioned. I think that you've got a lot of wisdom and experience that you are and have been. I'm positive have been sharing with other people around the world. So we are obviously going to be in touch. And if any of you have questions, please reach out to us on
Sure.
LinkedIn. I think we can probably throw our LinkedIn links here in the chat. Maybe Julia, who's moderating, can actually throw those in here before we finish. But overall, any last words? Not like in a bad
No,
negative
no.
way, but like, what would you like to
I
encourage
think it's
people
like
with?
any other challenge, right? It's just break it down into digestible parts and put together a plan and reiterate that plan if necessary. It's the same approach to any problem, and the economy and how you help your market is just one more problem that we're looking to try and overcome. But I think at the end of the day, it's stay positive, stay strong, stay focused and disciplined, and you got to put in that hard work. And sometimes it takes a lot more effort to get the same result, but don't let that discourage you. Just understand and accept that change and move forward. And I think you'll be fine.
Well, I just shared our links for LinkedIn. So if any of you want to, by all means, connect. We'd love to chat with you. But I hope you all have a great rest of your day, wherever you are. Maybe it's night, maybe it's day. And thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us. It was a pleasure chatting with you, Adrian.
Likewise.
And yeah, we'll have
For
to do this
sure.
again sometime.
Thanks again. Take care.